The cold metal floor of the Prometheus watch station hummed beneath Hannah's feet as she walked through the narrow corridor. Outside the small windows, space stretched forever in all directions. No stars were close enough to give real light. Here, far beyond Pluto, where Earth's most distant listening post floated alone, Hannah had been working the night shift for 3 years now. Every night, she sat at her desk with headphones on, listening to the sounds of space. Most nights, she heard nothing but static and the whispers of distant galaxies. Sometimes she wondered if anyone out there was listening back. The communications room was quiet, except for the soft beeping of machines. Hannah settled into her chair and put on her headphones. The sounds of the universe filled her ears: cosmic radiation, the death songs of old stars, and the birth cries of new ones. She had learned to love these sounds, even when they meant she was alone with just machines for company. At exactly 3:47 in the morning, station time, something changed. Hannah frowned and adjusted her headphones. There, mixed in with the usual static, was something different. It was very faint, so weak that she almost missed it. But it had a pattern, like music or code. "Commander Park," she called across the room. Her voice echoed in the empty space. "Commander." Park Jin-woo floated over from his desk, moving carefully in the low gravity. He was an older man with kind eyes and gray hair. He had spent most of his life in space, and Hannah trusted him more than anyone. "What do you have, Hannah?" he asked, settling beside her workstation. "Listen to this." She played the signal through the speakers. It was almost lost in the background noise, but if you listened carefully, you could hear it. Numbers, patterns. Something that was definitely not natural. Park's face grew serious. "How long have you been tracking this?" "Just picked it up." "But Commander, look at the frequency analysis." Hannah's fingers flew over her keyboard, bringing up charts and graphs on her screen. "This isn't random. See these patterns. They repeat every 47 seconds. For the next hour, they worked together, trying to clean up the signal. Park called in Dr. Kim Soo, the station's language specialist, even though it was the middle of her sleep cycle. Kim arrived looking tired but curious. "Play it again," Kim said, settling at another workstation with a cup of coffee. The signal was clearer now, after Hannah had filtered out most of the cosmic noise. It definitely contained mathematical sequences, prime numbers, basic arithmetic. The kind of things that any intelligent species might use to say, "We are here, we are thinking beings." But there was something else buried deeper in the transmission. "There," Kim said suddenly, pointing at her screen. "Do you see that? It's the universal distress frequency." The room fell silent, except for the humming of machines. The universal distress frequency was something Earth's scientists had developed decades ago. A mathematical pattern that any spacefaring civilization should recognize as a cry for help. "Where is it coming from?" Park asked. Hannah checked her instruments. "The Kepler 442 system, about 1,200 light-years away." The number hit them like a physical blow. 1,200 light-years meant the signal had been traveling through space for 1,200 years before reaching them. Whatever was happening out there might have been over before humans had even invented the telescope. For 3 weeks, the team worked around the clock. They barely slept, taking turns at the computers, slowly pulling meaning from the faint signal. Other stations joined the effort, adding their listening power to help decode the message. Finally, Dr. Kim made the breakthrough. "I have it," she announced during the morning briefing. Her voice was shaking, and there were tears in her eyes. "The message is from a species calling themselves the Veil." She put the translation on the main screen. The words appeared in simple English, but their meaning was anything but simple. "To anyone who receives this signal, we are the Veil of the fourth world. Our sun dies. We have tried to save our people, but our ships can carry only millions. Billions will remain. Our star will explode in 7 of our moon cycles. We do not expect rescue. The distances are too great, and time is too short. We send this message so that someone, somewhere, will know we existed. We were billions of souls who loved life, who built cities, who sang songs, who raised children. Remember us. The Veilth were here. The communications room was completely quiet. Outside the windows, space looked the same as always, cold, dark, and empty. But now they knew it wasn't empty. Somewhere out there, 1200 years ago, an entire civilization had faced death and sent their final words into the void. Hannah stared at the message on her screen. The signal was so weak, so faint, that it had barely registered on their instruments. The Veilth had probably never expected anyone to hear it. They had just hoped that somewhere, someone might be listening. But Earth had heard them. Across 1,200 light years and 1,200 years of time, their desperate plea had finally reached someone who cared. Park stood up slowly. "Get me a direct line to Earth Command," he said quietly. "Priority Alpha, sir," Hannah asked. The Veilth called. "For help," Park said, looking out at the stars. "It might be too late, but we heard them loud and clear." The great assembly hall on Earth was never this loud. Representatives from every nation and space colony shouted at each other across the curved rows of seats. The crystal dome above them showed Earth spinning peacefully, but inside the hall, there was no peace at all. Council President Osiojin banged her gavel again and again, trying to restore order. "Please, representatives, we must discuss this calmly." But calm was impossible. The message from the Veilth had reached Earth 3 days ago, and nobody could agree on what to do about it. "This is madness," shouted Representative Martinez from the Mars colonies. "The signal is 1,200 years old. They're already dead." "We don't know that for certain," replied Councilor Chen from the Luna stations. "What if time moves differently for them? What if they're still alive?" "Even if they are alive," said Representative Okafor, standing up in the African Union section, "how could we possibly help them? 1,200 light years might as well be 12 million. Dr. Kong Min-jae sat quietly in the scientist section, watching the argument rage around her. She was a small woman with sharp eyes, and she had been Earth's top physicist for 15 years. Everyone knew her name because of her work on faster-than-light travel, but few people understood what she actually did. "The distance is impossible with normal engines," continued Representative Okafor. "Our fastest ships would take millions of years to reach them. By then, our own sun would be dead. But we have to try something," pleaded Dr. Santos from the South American Federation. 40 billion people are dying out there. 40 billion thinking, feeling beings with families and children and dreams. "We're dying," corrected Councilor Yamamoto from the Asian Alliance. 1,200 years ago. There's nothing left to save now except empty space." The argument went in circles for hours. Some representatives said humanity should focus on its own problems. Others said this was humanity's chance to prove they cared about life everywhere in the universe. A few suggested sending a message back, even though it would take 1,200 years to reach the Kepler system. Finally, President O called for quiet. "Dr. Kang, you haven't spoken yet. As our leading expert on space travel, what is your opinion?" The hall fell silent. Everyone turned to look at the small woman in the front row. Min-jae stood up slowly, her hands steady, despite the weight of 40 billion lives resting on her next words. "There might be a way," she said simply. The silence stretched longer. Then everyone started talking at once. "Order," President O shouted. "Let her speak." Min-jae waited until the hall was quiet again. "You all know about Project Lazarus," she said. "The quantum fold drive." A few people nodded. Most looked confused. Project Lazarus was so secret that only a handful of scientists knew the details. "For those who don't know," Min-jae continued, "we have been working on a new type of engine. Instead of flying through space, it folds space around the ship. Think of it like folding a piece of paper to make two distant points touch each other." "Has it been tested?" asked Representative Chen. Once, we sent a small probe to Alpha Centauri. The probe disappeared completely. The hall erupted in worried voices again. A failed test did not sound promising. But, Min-jae said loudly, we received a signal from the probe 3 days later. It had reached Alpha Centauri in just 6 hours, taken measurements, and was trying to return when something went wrong. 6 hours to Alpha Centauri, whispered someone in the back. That's 4 light years in 6 hours. The theory works, Min-jae said. We just need to make it work better, and we need to make it much, much bigger. She touched a button on her tablet, and a hologram appeared above the assembly hall. It showed a massive spaceship, larger than any ever built. This is what we would need, she explained. Not one ship, but a whole fleet. Each ship capable of carrying millions of people. We would have to build quantum fold drives powerful enough to jump 1,200 light years in a single fold. The hologram rotated slowly, showing the incredible size of the proposed ships. They were like floating cities, with parks and lakes and living spaces for an entire alien civilization. The cost would be enormous, said Representative Martinez. We would have to use every resource Earth has. Every mine, every factory, every shipyard, and it might not work, added Counselor Yamamoto. We could spend everything and end up with nothing but empty ships floating in dead space. That's true, Min-jae admitted. This has never been attempted before. The quantum fold drive might tear the ships apart. We might arrive centuries too early or too late. We might not arrive at all. Then why are we even considering this? Asked Representative Okafor. Min-jae looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of as many representatives as she could. Because 1,200 years ago, a dying civilization sent a message into space. They didn't expect anyone to hear it. They just hoped that somewhere, someone might care enough to remember them. She paused, letting her words sink in. Well, we heard them, and now we have to decide what kind of species we want to be. Are we the kind who shrugged and say too bad, too far, too late? Or are we the kind who try to help, even when the odds are impossible? The vote was scheduled for the next day. President O dismissed the assembly, but few people left. They stayed, in small groups, talking quietly about the choice before them. Earth would either attempt the greatest rescue mission in history, or 40 billion Veilth would remain just a memory in an old radio signal. The decision would define humanity forever. The vote came in at dawn, Earth time. 847 votes in favor, 832 against. Humanity would try to save the VAEL. Within hours, every shipyard from Earth to the outer colonies received emergency orders. The largest construction project in human history had begun. Captain Yoon Dae-ho stood on the observation deck of the Luna shipyard, watching thousands of workers swarm over the skeleton of what would become the new dawn. Sparks flew from welding torches, and massive cranes moved hull plates the size of city blocks into position. The ship was already larger than anything humans had ever built, and it was only half finished. Captain, called Chief Engineer Cho Yuna, as she floated up beside him. The quantum fold drive housing is ready for inspection. They moved through the ship's corridors, past workers installing life support systems and computer networks. Everything had to be perfect. One small mistake could kill millions of people. The quantum fold drive chamber was the size of a cathedral. In the center sat a machine that looked like a giant metal flower, its petals made of materials that didn't exist in nature. Exotic matter, created in particle accelerators and held stable by magnetic fields so powerful they could crush a person instantly. It's beautiful, Dae-ho said quietly. It's terrifying, Yuna replied. We're dealing with forces that could tear holes in space itself. One calculation error, and we might create a black hole. Dr. Bae Soman, the mission's temporal physicist, joined them in the chamber. She looked exhausted. For months, she had been working on the most complex mathematics ever attempted by humans. How are the calculations coming? Daeho asked. Slowly Somin admitted, the problem isn't just the distance, it's time. We're trying to fold space-time to arrive at a specific moment 1200 years ago, plus the time it will take for the supernova to actually happen. She showed them her tablet, covered in equations that made Daeho's head hurt, just looking at them. Think of it this way, she continued. We're not just jumping through space, we're jumping backward through time. But time isn't the same everywhere. It moves differently near large stars, in strong gravity fields, even in the folded space around our own drive. What's our margin of error? Yuna asked. Somin hesitated. If everything goes perfectly, we arrive 6 months before the veiled sun explodes. If something goes wrong, she shrugged, we could arrive 6 months too late. Or 6 years. Or 60. The construction continued around the clock. 17 ships were being built simultaneously, the largest fleet ever assembled. Each ship could carry 5 million beings, assuming the Veilth were roughly the same size as humans. But nobody knew for sure what the Veilth looked like. Dr. Liunju worked in the biological preparation labs, trying to design life support systems for aliens they had never seen. The only clues came from their message, which mentioned water and breathing and children. We're making educated guesses, she told the engineering teams. The Veilth seemed to need both air and water, so we're building hybrid environments. Half the ship will be flooded chambers, half will be air-filled corridors. What if we're wrong? Asked one of the engineers. Then we'll have to adapt quickly, Yanju replied, or they'll die anyway. Meanwhile, volunteers lined up at recruitment centers across Earth and the colonies. Everyone knew this was likely a one-way trip. The quantum fold drive had only been tested once, on a small probe that had disappeared. Scaling it up to carry entire cities through space was completely unknown territory. Captain Yoon interviewed hundreds of applicants for his crew. Pilots, engineers, doctors, teachers, soldiers, people from every walk of life who wanted to help save an alien species they would never meet. Why do you want to go? He asked each one. The answers were always different, but they meant the same thing. Because someone has to. Because they asked for help. Because it's the right thing to do. 3 months before launch, they received troubling news. The deep space telescopes had detected unusual activity in the Kepler 442 system. The star was showing signs of instability much earlier than predicted. The supernova could happen sooner than we thought, Dr. Kim Soo reported during the mission briefing. Maybe years sooner. How much sooner? Daeho asked. We don't know. Stellar death is unpredictable. The star could explode tomorrow, or it could last another decade. The construction crews worked even harder. Shifts ran 24 hours a day. People collapsed from exhaustion and were replaced by the next volunteer. The New Dawn and her sister ships grew larger and more complex each day. 2 weeks before launch, they ran the first full test of the quantum fold drive. The unmanned test ship Pioneer was loaded with sensors and launched toward the Alpha Centauri system. The fold activation lit up space like a second sun. Then the Pioneer was gone. 6 hours later, they received a signal. The ship had reached Alpha Centauri, taken measurements, and was preparing to return. But then the signal cut off. Did it work or not? President O asked during the emergency conference. It worked, Dr. Min-jae replied. The ship reached its destination, but something went wrong on the return trip. What kind of something? We don't know yet. Maybe the drive overloaded. Maybe space-time snapped back too hard. Maybe the ship was destroyed by the stress of the fold. Daeho looked at the 17 ships floating in Earth's orbital shipyards. Each one carried the hopes of humanity and the lives of millions of aliens who might already be dead. We launch in 2 weeks, he announced. Ready or not. Because somewhere across the galaxy, a star was dying, and time was running out. The moment before the quantum fold drive activated, Captain Yoon Daeho felt like he was standing on the edge of a cliff. Around him, the bridge of the new dawn hummed with nervous energy. His crew sat at their stations, hands steady on their controls, but he could see the fear in their eyes. "All ships report ready," announced Communications Officer Lim Juan. Her voice was calm, but Daeho had known her for 5 years. He could hear the tremor she was trying to hide. Through the main view screen, Daeho could see the other 16 ships of the rescue fleet. The Harmony, the Pioneer, the Courage, each one a city-sized vessel, filled with empty rooms waiting for alien refugees. Behind them, Earth hung like a blue marble, perhaps the last time any of them would see their home. "Dr. Soman, are the temporal calculations confirmed?" Daeho asked. Dr. Bae Soman looked up from her console, surrounded by screens full of impossible mathematics. "As confirmed as they can be, Captain. We're attempting something that has never been done before. We're folding space in time itself." Chief Engineer Cho, drive status. "Exotic matter containment is stable," Cho Yuna reported. "Quantum field. Generators are at maximum power." "Sir, I have to say it one more time. We're pushing this technology far beyond anything it was designed for." Daeho nodded. Everyone knew the risks. The test ship that had gone to Alpha Centauri had disappeared on its return trip. They might suffer the same fate, scattered across the galaxy or crushed by forces beyond understanding. "Signal from Earth. Command," Jiwan announced. "President O wishes the fleet good luck." Daeho thought about the billions of people watching from Earth, the colonies, the space stations. All of humanity was holding its breath, waiting to see if their species could reach across impossible distances to help strangers. "All ships, this is Captain Yoon," he said into his microphone. "Today we attempt something no one has ever tried before. We're going to fold space-time itself and travel 1,200 light-years in a matter of hours. We don't know if we'll arrive in time to help the Veil. We don't know if we'll arrive at all." He paused, looking around at his crew. "But we know why we're doing this. 1,200 years ago, a dying civilization sent a message into the void. They didn't expect anyone to hear it. They just hoped someone might care. Well, we heard them, and we care." "Quantum fold drive charging," Yuna announced. 30 seconds. To activation. The ship began to vibrate. Not the normal vibration of engines, but something deeper, like reality itself, was being stretched. The lights dimmed as enormous amounts of power flowed into the drive system. 15 seconds. Yuna counted down. 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Fold activation. The universe exploded. Daeho felt like he was being pulled apart and put back together again. Stars stretched into impossible lines of light. Space folded, like paper, bringing distant points together. Time moved backward and forward at the same time. The ship groaned and creaked as forces beyond imagination tore at its hull. Then, suddenly, everything stopped. Normal space returned, with a shock that threw everyone against their seats. Alarms blared across the bridge. Emergency lights flashed. Read. The main view screen showed stars, but they were the wrong stars. "Status report," Daeho called, his head spinning. "We're alive," G1 said, sounding surprised. "I'm receiving signals from—" "Wait, Captain. I'm only getting responses from 14 ships." Daeho's heart sank. Which ships are missing? The Courage, the Unity, and the Hope. They're not responding to any signals. 3 ships, 3,000 crew members, gone somewhere in the spaces between normal reality. "Sir," called Navigator Nam Hyok, "I have our position. We're in the Kepler 442 system." The fold worked. Despite the loss of 3 ships, Daeho felt a surge of hope. They had actually done it. Humans had just traveled 1,200 light-years in a matter of seconds. "What's our temporal position?" he asked Dr. Soman. She was frantically checking her instruments. "According to stellar position and radioactive decay measurements, We've arrived approximately 8 months before the predicted supernova. We made it in time? Life signs? Daeho asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. Multiple signals throughout the system, reported Science Officer Wang Tail. Massive population centers on the 4th planet. Orbital structures. Ship traffic. Captain. They're alive. The Veilth are still alive. The bridge erupted in quiet cheers. After months of preparation, and a journey that had nearly killed them all, they had arrived to find a living civilization. Sir Juan said suddenly, I'm receiving transmissions from the planet. They're trying to communicate with us. The main screen flickered, and then showed the most beautiful sight Daeho had ever seen. The face of an alien being appeared, tall and graceful, with skin that shimmered like water and large, luminous eyes that seemed to hold all the wisdom of the galaxy. The Veilth spoke in their own language, but the computer translated the words that appeared at the bottom of the screen. You came. Across impossible distance, you came. We had given up hope. More Veilth appeared on screen, their emotions clear even across the barriers of language and biology. Joy, wonder, gratitude, and something else, the desperate hope of a species that had been preparing to die. How is this possible? Another Veilth asked. Our message was sent so long ago, we never expected. Tell them, Daeho said to Giwan, that Earth heard their call. Tell them we're here to help. Around them, the Kepler system was full of life, cities that floated in space, ships that moved like living creatures, a civilization of 40 billion souls who had been waiting to die. But now they had a chance to live. The rescue had begun. The veiled sun was angry. Captain Yoon, Daeho, could see it through the main view screen, burning brighter and more violently each day. Solar flares erupted from its surface like the death screams of a giant beast. The star was preparing to explode, and everyone in the system could feel it. How much time do we have? Daeho asked Dr. Wang Tail, the mission's stellar specialist. Days, not weeks, Wang replied, studying his instruments. The core temperature is rising faster than our models predicted. When it reaches critical mass... He didn't need to finish. Everyone knew what happened when a star went supernova. Everything within 50 light-years would be vaporized in seconds. The evacuation had been going on for 6 weeks. But the numbers were heartbreaking. 40 billion Veilth lived in the system. The 14 surviving human ships could only carry 70 million at most. Dr. Lee Yunju worked without sleep, modifying the ship's life support systems. The Veilth were beautiful. Creatures tall and graceful, with skin that changed colors like flowing water. But they needed both air and water to survive, which made the engineering challenges enormous. We're installing water chambers throughout every ship, she explained to the engineering teams. The Veilth can breathe underwater, but they also need air spaces for their young. The Veilth children were the most heartbreaking sight Daeho had ever seen. They were small and delicate, with large eyes that seemed to understand they were in danger. Veilth parents carried them gently onto the human ships, whispering what sounded like lullabies in their musical language. Captain, called Chief Engineer Cho Yuna from across the bridge, the Veilth engineers want to help with the modifications. They say they have technology that might make the ships carry more people. The cooperation between the two species was remarkable. Despite never having met before, humans and Veilth worked together as if they had been partners for centuries. The Veilth had biotechnology that could create living walls and breathing spaces. The humans had power systems and construction techniques that amazed the aliens. But it wasn't enough. We've loaded 13 ships to maximum capacity, reported Logistics Officer Nam Hyok. That's 65 million Veilth. We have room for maybe 5 million more. Daeho stared at the numbers on his screen. 70 million saved out of 40 billion. It was better than nothing, but it felt like failure. Sir Juan called from the communications station. I'm receiving priority signals from the Veilth homeworld. Their orbital cities are losing power. The solar storms are getting stronger. Through the view screen, they could see the Veilth homeworld, a blue-green planet covered with beautiful crystalline cities. Massive space elevators stretched from the surface to orbital stations like silver threads. But now those threads were breaking as the dying star's energy overwhelmed their systems. How long before total system failure? Daeho asked. Arzwang replied grimly, maybe less. That's when the Veilth did something that changed everything. Captain, Jiwan said, her voice filled with wonder. I'm receiving a transmission from what they call their quantum singers. They want to speak with you directly. The main screen showed a group of Veilth unlike any they had seen before. These were older, their skin shifting through colors that seemed to contain entire galaxies. When they spoke, their voices harmonized in ways that made the air itself vibrate. The computer translated their words, humans of Earth. We are the quantum singers of our people. We can manipulate the fabric of spacetime through biogen harmonics. We offer our knowledge to help save more of our people. What are they proposing? Daeho asked. We can create a fold space bubble around your entire fleet. It will allow you to carry our people in compressed spacetime. Millions can fit where thousands fit now. Dr. Soman looked up from her calculations. Captain, they're talking about technology we don't even understand. Biological manipulation of quantum fields. But there is danger, the quantum singers continued. The process requires all of our singers to link together. If we fail, both our species may be lost and folded. Space. The bridge fell silent. The Veilth were offering to risk everything to save more of their people. But if they failed, even the 70 million already evacuated would die. Sir, Huang called urgently. Stellar readings are spiking. The supernova is beginning. Through the view screen, they could see the star beginning to collapse. Its outer layers were falling inward, while its core compressed beyond the limits of matter. Soon, it would explode with the force of 1 billion nuclear weapons. All ships, this is Captain Yoon, Daeho announced. Prepare for emergency departure. We leave now. But as the human fleet began to move away from the dying star, something incredible happened. The quantum singers throughout the system began to sing. It wasn't music in any human sense. It was mathematics made audible, physics transformed into harmony. The song spread from ship to ship, from the homeworld to the orbital cities, until every Veilth in the system was singing together. Space itself began to bend around the fleet. Reality folded like origami, creating pockets of compressed space-time, where millions of veiled refugees suddenly fit into spaces designed for thousands. Impossible, Samian whispered, watching her instruments. They're creating stable quantum pockets. Every ship is now carrying 10 times its designed capacity. The supernova exploded just as the quantum singers completed their song. The star's death cry lit up half the galaxy, but the combined human Veilth fleet was already moving faster than light, carried by harmonies that bent the universe itself. When they finally stopped, safe in empty space, far from the explosion, Captain Yoon looked at the final numbers. 400 million Veilth had been saved. Not all of them, but more than anyone had thought possible. 3 months later, they established New Kepler colony in a distant system. The quantum singers helped human ships navigate spacetime with perfect precision, while human engineers adapted Veilth biotechnology for miraculous advances. The Veilth built a memorial on their new world, a crystal spire that sang with the voices of their lost billions. But they also built another monument, a brass plaque with words in both languages. Their final plea was faint, but Earth heard it loud and clear. The universe was vast and often cruel, but in one corner of the galaxy, 2 species had proven that distance meant nothing when someone needed help.